I think marketers are still really, really invested in understanding their own data, quote unquote first party data, their owned asset, which makes a lot of sense. I think if anything's shifting, or certainly what I hope continues to shift, is in understanding that while your own customer data is absolutely the foundational asset to start from, it's not the only answer. And the reason it's not the only answer is no one company has all the signal you want on a consumer, and you don't touch all the consumers you want to touch. Very few companies have access to that many people. And so with a mission to continue to grow your customer set, not just deepen relationships with existing customers, it's really important to think about how you leverage your own data, but then augment it and supplement it with other signal that absolutely is going to help you grow your business. And I do think marketers are more and more appreciating that it isn't an either or, that quote unquote first party data isn't good and third party data isn't quote bad, that there's good and bad in both, and that you want to stitch it together as best possible to have as most fulsome view of the customer as possible.
Well, to dive in a bit on the value of third-party data, as we know, media fragmentation is unending. It's a permanent part of life, it seems. So how can third-party data help marketers fill in the gaps that maybe first-party data can't cover?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different dimensions of where sourcing data from outside your own walls helps, both in terms of targeting, and then let's also talk about measurement. Certainly from a targeting, really a segmentation perspective, right? What we're really talking about is creating tight enough segmentation strategies that you can reach a cohort of consumers that are likely to respond to the messages you're putting forward, and that are going to do that in the places where you're buying media. Yes, media fragmentation is not just a feature, or not a bug, it is a feature. It's the world we all live in. We as consumers watch lots of content and read lots of content in different places, and so certainly the ability to triangulate a view of a consumer in a more holistic way, such that you can create more of a reach frequency model across all your media touchpoints, makes a ton of sense. It's clearly an important part of the journey. But from a measurement perspective too, it's also really, really important. You want to be able to understand who have you reached and who performed. And it's not just enough to know that you exposed them to an ad and that you got a conversion. You'd like to understand, well, what other signals were common amongst the type of conversions that I received, and how can I maybe use those signals, model those signals to then create new strategies. So I think, listen, it's critical. I think everyone should be starting from a perspective of, it's not where it's sourced, but it's having a holistic view as possible of consumers, such that you are as educated as you can be of who do you want to reach, how have you reached them, and what actually worked when you did it. And that takes multiple data signals.
So privacy is the flip side of the coin of performance and effective marketing. So again, thinking about how third-party data is evolving in marketers' hands, how should they be thinking about the use of third-party data in terms of the responsibilities involved and the privacy issues involved?
So I think ensuring that data is ethically sourced is not actually a question of where you source it, being your own or from others. You want to ensure that you have the right processes in place in all cases. And I don't look at privacy as the opposite to personalization. I look at them as partners in crime. We all care about, or actually any reputable party in this industry cares a ton about ensuring that consumers are well represented, that they have the choice to be represented in the ways that they're comfortable, but that then we deliver these consumers with personalized, relevant experiences, which turns out we as consumers really, really care about and enjoy and want. Right? If you think about all the times you don't have to re-log in, or your content is personalized, that's all data under the hood that is being generated to enable that personalized experience. And so to me, it's not an either or, it's a continued recognition that our industry can do a better job of creating the higher standards for what good data looks like, and it's one of the reasons that TransUnion exists in this space. We've been a regulated data asset and entity rather for a long time, because that's at the core of where we started in the credit business. And so we take that type of thing very seriously, and would encourage more of the industry to create real compliance practices around that to enable personalization while holding to that high ethical standard.
So I'm not sure if this is a question about your expectations or maybe just hopes, but are there any particular strategies or tools that you think will empower marketers to better balance first and third-party data and drive personalization at scale?
Yeah, well, listen, ultimately, obviously, we can't have most of these conversations without thinking about generative AI here in some way, shape, or form. And I don't think about it necessarily as types of data, but listen, if we think about it just more of a macro scenario, which is with a continued desire for marketers to reach the right consumers and create conversions, for media companies to be able to help marketers do that through the right inventory choices and the right targeting strategies, and everyone in the middle figuring out how to enable that. And we sit there in the middle trying to enable that. There's no doubt that generative AI is going to make the entire ecosystem evolve, going to automate a ton, going to allow us to focus less on what I often think of as the sausage making of the process and more on the strategy side of it. So that's clearly the big one we're all thinking about, but behind that, what we're all really talking about is more advanced analytics, more streamlined operations, and easier and more effective times to spend time on what we should spend time, which is how do I think about what's the right next message to deliver to that person.